if you truly do want to be the best at what you do, you have to get into the uncomfortable positions to learn, to gain ground, to understand what you're truly capable of, how far you can push yourself. And I think that's, it's a skill set that you have to develop over time. You have to have the people in your network around you to help you, force you into those positions. And then you have to be able to look at it objectively and understand, okay, where am I winning, where am I losing, and be able to assess those situations as well. And if you can do all those things, it's amazing how much ground you can gain, year in and year out.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Moeller Real Estate and Business Podcast. I'm your host, Phil Moeller, and on this podcast, we will be interviewing guests that have made their mark in real estate, in business, and in other areas of life. Listening to podcasts myself has helped me in so many different ways and continues to do so. If you're a real estate investor or an entrepreneur, or aspiring to be either, or just someone that wants to learn, you've come to the right place. An easy way to have an impact is to share this episode with friends or family, provide a review, or just spread the word. We greatly appreciate it, and now let's get to the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Moeller Real Estate and Business Podcast. Man, I'm really excited for today's episode and today's guest, Mr. Matt Light, three-time Super Bowl champion Matt Light, who grew up or is local, right? Relatively local background here. Now, a little bit lives in different areas of the U.S. depending on the time of year these days, but a local legend, if you will. And I'm really excited to get into this, not just because of that, but because of the person that you are and the great things that you're doing. So Matt, welcome to the show.
Yeah, good to be here.
So just a little bit more. So Matt Light, three-time Super Bowl champion, our first Super Bowl champion on the podcast. So thank you, Matt. Married to his wife, Susie. They run the Light Foundation, which is really focused on helping young people develop the skills, values, and mindset they need to create a meaningful and productive future. So this is the stuff I love to talk about. I mean, values, mindset, meaning, productivity, purpose. Those are all things that we're going to get into today, and I'm really excited about it. But before we just dive into that too much, Matt, tell us about your story, your career, kind of some things that really shaped the direction you went with your life.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was maybe the non-traditional route when it comes to my career. And the reason I say that is I grew up like a lot of people probably that you've had on this podcast, people that you run into every day. I'm a Darke County kid. Grew up just outside of Greenville, around the edge of Greenville, actually. I had 1 foot in the city limits, 1 foot outside. And, I come from a family background that includes hunting, the outdoors, hunting, camping, the outdoors, and hunting. So, I feel very blessed to, have had, so many people in my family help shape, me as a young person, a young man, and then all the way to the person I am today. So many of my influences were shaped, obviously, growing up in Darke County and in a very tight-knit family. But all those core values are the things that still govern my life today. So, we did everything that the Darke County outdoorsmen do, right? I mean, We grew up chasing squirrels and rabbits and deer and hanging out in camp. And, I would say that, my father is a very dynamic, person. My mom is one of the most caring, thoughtful people on the planet. My mom taught music for 35 years in the local school system. So, I come from a family of educators. My dad's like kind of a jack of all trades, and he's a guy that, the history and the way he approaches things, very independent, really kind of set me on a path to, question everything and just work hard and go after the things that I wanted. But at no point, growing up was it, a situation where my parents forced me into anything. I mean, they wanted me to figure things out on my own. So, small town, independent kid, got in a little bit of trouble when I was younger, probably did things that I regretted immediately. And to this day, think that I probably could have made a much better decision. But, luckily, again, the family kept me on track. And, I got an opportunity to go play football. And to be honest with you, that's where the story kind of changes, because I had never seen an NFL game or a college game in my life, period. End of story. So I didn't grow up idolizing football. I didn't grow up, watching certain players. I had no idea that Purdue was in the Big Ten. I went there because it had a great engineering program. My father's an engineer, and I thought that made a lot of sense. And they were going to pay for my college, so that made it even easier. So, to be honest with you, I would say that my story is one that is, I got really, really lucky, and I made a couple good decisions along the way. But ultimately, I just followed, what my heart told me to do. And a lot of people poured into me and kept me focused. And the rest, just kind of happened, right? I mean, I don't know. I know there's a lot of people that grow up wanting to play in the NFL and they want to play college football. That wasn't me. I wanted to be a forest ranger. I wanted to live every day in the outdoors, and somehow ended up, playing this game of football, which I had a blast doing. But I guess I'll always have that small town mentality, and that and the people, and it's always the people that shape you.
Well, it's interesting how much time you spent really going through talking about your youth, and you can tell there's, first of all, how much you were formed from your youth, and probably why it's become a passion of yours to really help form other youth. I want to talk about that more. The other thing that clearly comes out in that whole conversation you're talking about is just your humility. I mean, a lot of, luck, people pouring into you. And while there's some truth to that, one of your core values is hard work. And I'm sure you had that too. But so I want to ask about the NFL, and what made you so successful in the NFL, and how much did that formation in your youth create that success? Was that tied to that, or was it something different?
Yeah, I mean, I think I learned a lot at the college level, right? I went to Purdue, and for some reason I thought I was going to be a good tight end, even though I'd done nothing athletic in my entire, football career, other than I did convince our quarterback in high school, Mr. John McGreevy, to throw me the ball when I took over the tight end position and forced our tight end to play tackle. I was always a lineman, right? And anyway, I went to Purdue, and there was a lot of adversity. The head coach that recruited me got fired, the first year when I got there. And so, I think there's defining moments in your life where you start to see that, what you thought was tough competition, you weren't even halfway up the ladder, right? Or what you thought you were capable of, you could far exceed that, especially if you, were observant and you watched the people around you and you saw the things that they did. And, by the time I got in the league, I think, a lot of the lessons that I learned from guys like Danny Hope, my college, offensive line coach, and other things that had helped shape me to that point, I still hadn't come close to, really maximizing even my own potential, right? So I think to answer the question, like what made me successful, yeah, a lot of it, happened early in my life, right? Like, work ethic and being accountable and holding myself accountable and pushing through the pain. And, you got to learn how to play hurt in life. You can't always, make the excuse or not do something because of. And I think really though, when I got to New England, there was also this sense of, man, this is completely different. This is another level, yet another rung higher on the ladder. And it was very apparent. And I think honestly, what really propelled me is I don't like to lose, right? And I know, that's cliche, or that's something that everybody can relate to, but there's a big part of me that just wanted to prove that I deserved to be there. And I don't know that I ever, I had 11 years, and I played them all in New England, and I was very fortunate to have that type of career. But I'm not sure there was ever a year that I felt like I had earned the right to be there. I mean, I guess I earned the right to show up every day, but there was a part of me that said, man, you got to prove it every second of every day. And that's probably what kept me going as long as I did.
Yeah. Wow. Well, first of all, I think you proved you belong there, Matt. So again, the humility comes out, but I want to talk about this. You said Purdue, New England, like what you thought you were capable of, and realizing like maybe you're only doing half of that or whatever that means. And I think that's so important. You talk about one of your core values, hard work. We believe through hard work and achievement, self-confidence is built. This is one of the best defenses of a child can have against negative influences. And I think for children, I think about my kids, and one of the most important things that we can do is build confidence and grit and toughness in them, so that because life's going to be hard, they're going to face adversity. So grit, toughness, mindset, courage, confidence, all those things are so important. And I think they're important for our kids, and they're important for us clearly as adults, which is why you're so passionate about teaching this at a young age. Talk about like the challenging situations, like should we be putting ourselves in harder situations, or how do we build this self-confidence, and how do we find out if we're only at half of our potential? Like we don't even know where we're at. So how do we go find that out?
Yeah, I mean, you really do have to go seek the uncomfortable places in life, and it sounds counterintuitive, right? The world tells you that you deserve to, have things easy, right? That drive-through fast food service is great, and it allows you to do all these other things. But the reality is, it when you sit back and you judge, how your day goes, right? If you don't look at the struggles and embrace them, then you're running away from them in most cases, right? And I like to talk to the young kids about, look, get yourself into those uncomfortable places, right? Make sure that you earn everything you get, because if the hardest thing you face comes in practice, then the games are a lot easier than you could possibly ever imagine, right? So, if you played sports, you can relate to this concept where, especially in a game of football, right? You practice for 6 days and you play one day a week.
Right.
And if you look at that mentality, it's no different than what you would do, say, at your job, in your own business profession, right? You gear up for these bigger moments, and you put the work in, and you earn the right to have a seat at the table and have the conversation with the client, or you earn the right to manufacture a widget better than the guys next to you so that you can get the marketplace or the share of the market that you want. But in that preparation, and especially in the game of football, if I'm practicing a third and short situation and the guy across from me is just brother-in-law in it, we call it brother-in-law in the practice, right? Taking it easy, making it easy for me so we don't have to really work that hard. I can't possibly get better, right? So I want to go against the best competition every single day, all day, and earn the right to walk out there on the field and perform at my highest level. And the only way to do that is to get outside your comfort zone on a regular basis. Now, if you have a great leader, and I would use a guy like Bill Belichick, Dante Scarnecchia, my offensive line coach, and with the Pats, when you have great people around you, they push you into those positions because it is truly human nature to do as little as possible to get by, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
maybe that's a prehistoric, thing that's encoded in our DNA to conserve energy.
Survival. It's just
Like, right,
survival, right?
right. It's something that if you truly do want to be the best at what you do, you have to get into the uncomfortable positions to learn, to gain ground, to understand what you're truly capable of, how far you can push yourself. And I think that's, it's a skill set that you have to develop over time. You have to have the people in your network around you to help you, force you into those positions. And then you have to be able to look at it objectively and understand, okay, where am I winning? Where am I losing? And be able to assess those situations as well. And if you can do all those things, it's amazing how much ground you can gain, year in and year out.
Man, now we're getting into it. I love it. All right, you brought up Mr. Belichick. I want to so the Patriots, the team, you were very successful in a very successful team, right? A legendary team, legendary coach. What differentiated the Patriots for all those years? Was it leadership? Was it the team leaders? Was it what differentiated the Patriots and even you in your career from the people that didn't make it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's such an individualized sport in terms of how you approach it, right? If you're a cornerback, it's completely different than a quarterback or an offensive lineman, right? I can speak from my position. the things that really helped shape me and what made us really good. But as an organization, right, you know, the jump from high school playing at Greenville High to Purdue was really intense. But the jump from Purdue, the college, game to the professional game under a guy like Bill Belichick, I mean, that took years to fully grasp. And, a lot of people don't make it. I mean, the average lifespan in the NFL is about 2.2, 2.3 years. It's less than 3 years, right? And I can remember thinking, man, I just got to survive this first year because I don't know if it's even possible, like you're just holding on but I could see the hierarchy and how Bill approached things. And, Bill was a really good communicator. As foreign as that may sound for people who have watched a press conference and seen Bill say things like, I mean, look, we're just trying to get better. I mean, look, we're on to Cincinnati. Like Bill didn't say much to the media, but in a team setting, every single day we started out with a team, kind of sit down with Bill. Here's the expectations. Here's what we need to work on. Here's what we're not going to be talking about because the media was always involved. There were very clear and everybody understood where they stand within the framework of the organization. We knew what to expect. We knew that it was going to be tough. And that's something that I see in the real world. I've been in the real world now as long as I had ever played, professionally. And, one of the things that I see break down in the real world is that you think that everybody's on the same page, but the reality is, unless you communicate that almost daily, then you shouldn't ever expect that, right? Because we all live in our own little bubbles and we all have life that approaches us when we're outside of the stadium or outside of the office, right? And there's a lot of things that people are juggling, and it takes a strong leader to make sure that the things that are most important and the direction that needs to be given and also the freedom that needs to be given, you got to weigh those things all the time. And with Bill, he did a phenomenal job of letting us know those things. The door going in, it would say, do your job, work hard, be attentive, put the team first, right? We'd see that every single day. He'd talk about those points, pretty much every week, if not every day in some form or facet. On the way out, it would say, manage expectations, speak for yourself, don't fuel the hype, right? All these things that he wants you to think about when you're not in the facility, but that will have a direct effect on how you play the game and how you prepare and how you stay at the top of your game, week in and week out. So great direction, great communication. And I think the other thing that set us apart is that we had really strong leaders, guys that weren't afraid to speak up in the locker room. And we dealt with things that the coaches shouldn't have been dealing with and couldn't have dealt with as well as we did, right? There's certain things that coaches are good at correcting. There's other things that aren't. And it's no different in the real world, right? You don't need to have the boss step in and deal with every single situation. There should be managers and people that are in positions of power that can step in and say, hey, look, that's not how we do things here. This is what I need from you today, or have those difficult conversations when you have a cancer in the locker room and it needs to be dealt with versus, letting those things linger for too long.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what I like there is just there's so many ties to organizational success and family success, whatever you want to call it. But first, just building out the team of people. And I suspect that, like you talked about, having strong leaders in the locker room, right? It couldn't just be the coaches, but I think the organization, the Patriots, Belichick, whomever was making the decisions, was being intentional about bringing those people in and bringing the right leaders to create the culture of the organization, so that they, the culture a lot of times is created by the organization, not the leader alone, but it's by who he's putting in place, and then the being clear on the vision to the organization, the mission, what we're trying to do. And the last thing is being really clear on what your role is and what your role's not. Just all those things, I think there's such a good tie to football and to organizational success. But it starts with the leader. I'm not saying it doesn't start with the leader. The leader's setting the expectation, but he's also putting the right people in place that can also be leaders on the team. So I just, it's really interesting to have, from your perspective, to be able to see the success in the NFL and what created that culture and that organizational success, and now doing that in your organization in the real world in the Light Foundation. So I want to talk a little bit more about that and what you're doing, because I had a coworker that was at the Christmas light show a couple weeks ago that you do, and just a lot of neat things. One thing I wanted to add, I want to talk about the Light Foundation, what you're doing a little bit, but also the different things and events you're doing and the values. One of the things you talk about is we talk about creating confidence, like this. I think is it called the Mud Runner, but doing hard things, building confidence, building grit. Is that what that specific event is about, or just tell us a little bit about the Light Foundation in general and why you're doing what you're doing?
Yeah, look, I think the why, when we started out, my reason for creating the Light Foundation was, okay, I didn't really feel like I deserved to be there. We won a Super Bowl in my rookie year, which was the most improbable thing that the Patriots, no one picked the Patriots to have, that kind of success. And, it was also a very dynamic year. It was my rookie year. It was 9/11. I found out that I was battling, Crohn's disease and, not the Crimea River, but, all these, pretty wild things came into my life. And when I had a chance to take a deep breath after the Super Bowl, and the birth of my daughter happened, about a month after the Super Bowl, and my first child, right? So, and I got married and all that stuff, I was able to look at it and say, my goodness, like, that whole to whom much is given, much is required, right? Like I have to do something bigger than just be a football player, because I never considered myself a football player anyway. I mean, I played the game of football. I never watched it. It was something I did. It kept me out of jail. I could hit people and not get in trouble. I mean, I thought it was the greatest thing in the world. But, I really felt like, okay, but what's next? And what's going to really be my purpose and my passion outside of this day job of mine? And again, I come from a family of educators, so it's just a natural thing. All right, well, let's find a way to benefit somebody, right? I mean, my goodness, I mean, they're paying me way more than I deserve. This is ridiculous. It was all new to me. And I put, basically my family in positions to help me out and help form the board. And we were a throughway, meaning that we would host an event, we would raise money, and then we'd find a nonprofit to gift, these funds with.
Right.
And, I guess I was disappointed in the return on that investment, and it didn't always go to the things that we thought. And that's when, that little voice in my head was like, hey, look, if you're going to do it, you better own it all the way if you want to have the outcome that you're desiring, right? And that's when we set in motion about 2 years into it. By 2003, 2004, we really started to put, all the meat on the bone of who we wanted to be, who we wanted to serve, and how we wanted to do it. And since then, over the last 20 years, we've been able to create unique programming. It's outdoor based. We bring our faith, we bring our passion, we bring, the people that help shape my life, my parents, my in-laws, my cousins, my relatives, my friends, all these people that made a big influence on me. They're now, and I get to watch this, it's the coolest thing in the world, they're now influencing the lives of kids from across the country. And it's pretty simple, right? Walk alongside young people, show them, how it's done, hold them accountable. We talk about the real pledge, right? How many real people are in your life? How many people can you really depend on? What is real to you? What can I do to really help you take the next steps? And it's all about responsibility, ethics, accountability, and then being a leader, because whether you want to or not, we all have to be those things. So that's the core essence of the Light Foundation. And all of that falls under the Light Foundation Leadership Academy, because everything that we do goes back to, how can I lead? How can I be a better leader at home, within my organization, within my friend group, and that's our passion. So we've got programs that work with first graders. We got programs that work with high school age kids. And we serve about 7,500 kids annually through Chenoweth Trails and the Light Foundation. Some of them are partnership programs. Some of them are our programs. But at the end of the day, it's just walking alongside those young people and seeing their growth.
Man, and just to hear all the things you're talking about and the mindset you have, and to be able to just teach that and lead 7,500 kids annually, and the compounding impact you're having, I think, is so neat. One thing, first of all, two major things there. One is, to whom much is given, much is required. And I think, in general, first of all, if you're listening, you probably live in the U.S., although we have listeners outside the U.S., but you're probably very blessed with the where you live, the freedoms you have, the era we live in, like just the foundation of blessings that we have is so good. But then, okay, you're maybe having, if you're listening to this, maybe you're having some success in business or in your career or whatever it might be. So many blessings, but there's some people that are maybe a little bit complacent, like they're comfortable and they're not testing themselves. What do you say to those folks?
I think it's easy. Number one, I mean, I have to talk myself out of the couch every now and then, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think especially when you look at where we are right now, right? We're coming off an election year. We're coming off of a lot of uncertainty around the world, right? There are many reasons to look at what you have, what you've been given, what your talents are, and find a way to pay it forward. Because I can tell you one thing, you know, I heard all the stories about my grandfather, and both my grandfathers, and I didn't get a chance to meet either one of them. And the era that and the generations that came before us, I mean, these men and women, they did things that blow my mind. I have a passion for taking down old barns, and I do a lot in Darke County. And people bless me. They're like, "Hey, man, I don't know if you want to even mess with this." And I'm like, "Dude, I'll do this all day long if you let me." And I get to reclaim that history, and I get to see the history, and I have a real passion in timber framing. And we teach a timber framing course to the foundation, and it's
Yep.
all about leadership, believe
Love
it or
that.
not. But either way, the point I'm getting to is that you think about the people and the struggles and what they had to go through 50 years ago, 100 years ago. You back up 150 to 200 years ago, and now you're talking about the first settlers that came into our area, right? Back before Fort Recovery was called Fort Recovery because of the war and what happened to all the people up there, right? All these
Right.
things that are rich in history, and those lessons were passed down, but they've gone quiet, and they're not being told as much. And so I feel like we have this obligation to take those lessons and pay them forward. So if you're somebody that haven't found the way to give back, or have found a way to step in, it's amazing what you can do just with your own experiences, right? And it doesn't
Yeah.
always mean monetarily, but I think now is probably the most important time in my life, where I feel like we all need to, if we have the ability, if we have the time, if we have the bandwidth, to make sure that we're pouring into this younger generation what it means to sacrifice, what it means to really work hard, and to be there for other people, and to not just worry about the bottom line for your own bank account, but how we can bring those around us to the table, to have the conversations, and to do the things that will put us into a better position from a small town community standpoint, to a stronger state, to a stronger country. And again, some ways people think it's cliche, but we've gotten away from it for a long time, and you can see the erosion when it comes to even like our school systems, and in our churches, and in our community, and when it comes to crime, and when it comes to just the simple respectful things that
Yeah.
didn't used to happen. And the only reason it happens is because the leaders aren't there in the numbers they were in the past. And we need to
Yeah.
develop strong leaders, people with a backbone that don't have a problem doing the right thing every time, and they're going to bring others to the table alongside them. So that would be my charge. You asked the question,
Man.
so that's my
Oh man.
challenge to each and every one of us.
I love it. And leaders strong, honestly, being courageous, like with what you're doing. Courage is such a strong word. Strength of heart is what courage means. The time is, to me, like the time is now for people. The time is now. I mean, if you don't feel like you have the time, assess where your time is going. The time is now. If you don't feel like you have the money, we're in the wealthiest age in history. The money is available. Like you can have an impact. The bandwidth, think, like it's time to think about what we're doing, and then just man, reflecting back on the people that have paved the way for the opportunity that we have is so important. And I don't do it, right? I mean, you mentioned Fort Recovery, so close to both of us. Um, just so much to think about there. So I appreciate it so much. The other thing you talked about is this. I love this comment earlier. I want to talk about surrounding ourselves with people. And you said the real pledge that you have. I want to hear more about that. Real people, because I think a lot of discussions, I think a lot of society is very surface level and it's not real. And I mean, I just like, I've been more intentional and gotten into more real good discussions with friends, with family members, with others, because so much is surface level, weekend group to whatever. Um, and I want to ask about you and how have you been intentional in your life with your network and, maybe even how have you been blessed with certain people and leaders that have had a big impact on you? Talk about network and your association and the impact it can have on somebody.
Yeah, listen, I tell people all the time, the thing that I'm richest in is great humans. I've been blessed, ever since I was a little kid. I've always gravitated to people that are older than me in some ways, that have more knowledge. I'm a big believer in, you don't have to have all the answers. You just need to have the people around you that you can go to who you think may have the answers, because it's a lot more fun to learn from the people that you respect and than it is to look it up in a book. And that's just me. I mean, some people do a great job looking in a book, but I love to be able to have a rich network of incredible people and who bring their passion and their energy to everything that they do. And again, that's really what we do through the foundation. I get to introduce these people. I mean, I get to watch my dad work with young kids and teach them how to make an atlatl or an arapuca, or a self bow, or whatever it may be, right? I get to watch a guy like Hank Steinmetz, who's a world-class blacksmith, teach kids how to pound metal. I get to watch my mom teach these kids how to cook, and my mother-in-law. Those, when you're around those kind of people, not only does it drive you, but it makes you a better person, because you get to see and you get to hear from their mistakes and their creativity. And I think a lot of times, people in today's world, right, it is surface. It's what does my profile say, right? What does how many likes do I have? And I'm not laughing at it, but I kind of am. I mean, I've never been on social media in my life, and I grew up in that era where it was all starting to come out, and I've never logged onto a platform. I never will. And I know there's great things that can come out of it, but to me, when you can look someone in the eye, when you can, be close enough to them to feel their passion, not just see it, it's a whole nother level of incredible. And I would say the other thing is, we do events to raise money for the Light Foundation, and it's important that we do those things. We aren't funded by the state or the federal government. We have to go out and we have to earn it. And we don't hire an outside group to do it. And the reason that this is important is because everyone on my team has to wear every hat. They got to go from programming and working directly with the kids, to cleaning a bathroom, to running an event, to setting up cones in a parking lot. It doesn't matter what it is. Right. Everybody has to wear every hat. And that's really important, because they know that every dollar that comes in is really important, and they're not going to just spend money on something. It has to be purposeful, right? And when people come to our events, the number one compliment that I get, they'll come up to me, and it happens every year in every event. They say, your team is unbelievable. The way they treated us, the way they greeted us, how professional they are. And that's really important for two reasons. One, it just speaks to the level of people that we have on our team. But two, when you're running a nonprofit, you have your hand out all the time. And so it's important to me that these people know how much we appreciate it. And our team is so good at that. So when you talk about people, when you talk about the network, when you talk about who you surround yourself with, you have to make a conscious effort to do that all the time, because it takes one bad individual to cast a shadow over the entire organization. And as tough as it can be to hire the great, the best people all the time, the reality is that's it, right? One person who's not on the same page can bring an entire organization down. And that's why you have to just be so, thoughtful on who you bring in and how you do business. And again, it goes back to what we talked earlier, the leaders, you have to maintain that all the time too, because even when you establish the culture, it's hard. It may be even harder to maintain it,
And you got to
right?
communicate too, like you talked about.
No doubt. And I can remember the military asked me to come in and talk to some of our special operators on what it's like to win back-to-back championships. We did that in 03 and 04, because you think about what the guys in our special operations community do, right? Like every single time they go out to perform a mission, they have to be perfect. If they're not, they don't come home. And when I thought about that, it was like, oh, that's interesting, right? But it is very true to maintain a level, and I'll end with this on this thought. One of the great things that I heard Belichick say one time, and it was on a sit down that he did with Nick Saban. Here you have the greatest college football coach at the time, the greatest NFL coach. They're good friends. They're having an interviewer ask them some questions and tee some things up. But the question was, hey, what is it like to have everybody gunning for you, right? Everybody wants to, you're the biggest game on their schedule every single year. And I remember Nick Saban started out, and Nick Saban said, well, it's like being at the top of the mountain. And here we are standing at the top of the mountain. And yeah, and he said something like this, I'm paraphrasing, but we got a good perspective. We can see them all trying to charge the mountain, but they all want to topple us. They're all coming from all sides, and they're going to be their biggest game. And, we're trying to, stay on the high ground, basically, right? And he's talking about all these things about being at the top of the mountain. And when he ended, Bill Belichick, kind of looked into the camera and he goes, and when I'm on top of the mountain, only thing I'm thinking about is how can I climb higher? And I thought, now see, that's the difference between being great and being the best, right? These guys are at the top of the mountain, and they're not worried about the view. They're not worried about, all the competition necessarily. They just want to know, how can I climb higher? And I think that says a lot.
Yeah. Well, and I think just the people, just go back to the network and the people you've learned from. And I think, you talked about wealth, like the richest in being around great humans, having a rich network. And if you go to people that have a rich network, if they don't know the answer, like you talked about, the reason they have the answers a lot of time is because they themselves have a network. So you're only two people away. I love the whole discussion about looking someone in the eye. I think, I'm just being outdoors and engaged and present is so important for our youth. And then they're not on their phones, they're not on social media, which is a whole different discussion. And then just the intention of your team, building your team, the leadership of your team, the vision of what you're doing, the impact that you're doing, I think is so neat. And you're doing a lot of just, you're climbing. You're to whom much is given, much is required. So you're saying you're at a great spot, but you're looking to climb still. And my question for you is, either now or in the past, we talked about courage a little bit. Like, what has been some of the hardest things that you've had to do and say, hey, this is going to take courage from me to step out and go be the leader I need to be and be an example to others for them to have courage? What's been a hard thing that you've had to do, whether it's in the NFL, in the light organization? What has been a tough, hard, challenging, courageous thing for you to do?
Yeah, I think honestly, I love challenges, and I like to challenge myself. And a lot of times I look at the tough situations, and it gets me to focus more. It gets me, to dig a little deeper. And I don't know, sometimes I like putting myself in tough situations, as weird as that may sound. But I would say just the first thing that comes to mind is time management. It's really tough. I've got a lot of interests. I've got a lot of hobbies. As my wife would say, I don't need any more hobbies. I don't need any more interests. Um, and I think there's this struggle internally of, am I being selfish and wanting to do some of these things? Is this taking away from my family time? Right. And so I think time management, when you get into a position where you have success, right? And back in the day, that was winning Super Bowls. It's amazing how many people want a piece of your time or want you to do something, and it's not always in the best interest of you or for your family or for your career to take advantage of these things. And you have to learn how to do things like say no. You have to learn how to prioritize, what it is you truly want to do, and then be realistic as to, do I have the time to do it, and can I commit to these things? And I think it's easy to say yes in a lot of ways, but it's probably it's a lot tougher to tell someone, I just can't do that at this time, because you want to be a part of things, or you want to be helpful, or you want to eventually get to where you're going, but it's just not the right time. And I struggle with that, struggle with prioritizing things. There's a part of me that is very comfortable, even though, as a guy, and I think probably almost everybody can relate to this, I don't want to be told what to do. I don't like to be forced into blah blah blah. But the reality is, I actually kind of like being told what to do. I actually like it when there's a drill sergeant or a coach or somebody else saying, all right, now it's on to this, and now it's on to that. Yep. There's a freedom in that in a lot of ways. So, there's a good mix. You got to lead when you're called to lead. You got to follow, when you need to follow. And in most of the time, right, you just got to stay on task, right? And that's the part that I think I struggle with the most, is staying on task and being really present when you need to be present. Because I think the other thing in life is that, again, we've got all these ridiculous distractions like this thing and all these other things, and it's easy to have those squirrel moments that take you away. So, when you're with someone, be present. Make sure that they know that they are important, what they say is important, and that you follow up on what you say you're going to follow up on. And those are all challenges.
Man, I can tell like how engaged and present you are in this whole conversation. I could just feel it. So I appreciate it. The whole courage discussion and time management and saying no. I mean, if you say yes to someone, you're saying no to something else. So I think, as we have success, we're being asked to do more and more, right? You, by the way, thank you so much for being so gracious to come on the show. I appreciate it, because you have a lot that you can say yes to and no to. But I think having clarity of our purpose and our mission, not just professional, not just for others, but for our family, for our spouses, and getting clear on that, I think helps give clarity to what to say yes to and what to say no to as well. So I think that's just such good wisdom from you. I appreciate. Man, this has been awesome. This is fun. Can we go for 2 more hours here? We won't do that. I won't do that to you, because we just talked about time, but I'd love to. I want you to step back, okay? Think about, your career, but really think about what you're doing at the Light Foundation, because I think it is so neat. I just looking through your website, I'm like, man. And even the conversation the first couple of years, you were a pass-through organization, as you called it, but it took some time to figure out like what you're really, really passionate about. This wasn't just like in a month you figured this out, right? This is it seemed like a 2, 3, 4, 5-year period. And I'm sure it's evolved over the last 20. I mean, this is 20 years running now. So just everything you're doing. But if you step back and think about it, how does what you're doing, how does it make you feel?
Yeah, it's incredible. I do something at the end of each summer. People out here think we're nuts. We leave New England when it's actually nice to actually be here. We're not far from beaches, and you got the mountains and all this other stuff, but home will always be home for me. And being able to take my kids back and work the camps every single summer since Chenoweth Trails became a reality has been an absolute blessing. And at the end of each summer, I get to walk the entire property by myself, and it's just something that I've done, for the last 20 some odd years. And it's like the only time that I'm not working on something or working towards something, because the only thing I'm doing is taking the last walk before we head back and kind of resume our northeastern lifestyle, right? And each year that I've done that, I'm just blown away. I mean, I think back to the guys like Glenn Raymert, who started working on an amphitheater 25, 26 years ago, laying stone with his own hands, carving into the side of a hill, to create this masterpiece, and I walk past, a tree house that's 22 feet off the ground, and I think about all the people that helped make that a reality. I go I go past the old barn where our offices used to be, and mice and rats running all over the place while my guys are on computers and trying to do work. And I think about all the years they suffered, freezing cold in the winter. And then I look at, what we have today and as our main camp. And, it's very humbling. It speaks to the people. It speaks to the passion that they brought. And, one person can be the person that has the vision, so to speak, but the vision means nothing if you don't have an army that are willing to sacrifice to pull that off. And that's what I think about. And so I also think about, when I walked this past summer, I'm looking around and, I guess the one thing for me is I'm kind of like Bill. I'm always trying to figure out how we can climb even higher. And, we've got some big goals in mind, and we have things that we want to do and places we want to go, and we want to build on the success that we've had so far. And so we're going to be building a brand new lodge. That's going to take things to a whole nother level. That's going to take a lot of work. And you talk about, what things that you got to gear up for, and you got to push yourself outside your comfort zone. That's a big one. And we want to build a trade school. We think trade schools are really important today. And we think the lessons that it teaches kids is directly in line with who we are as a nonprofit. But that's a big goal. That's a lot of work. But I think the blessing in all of that is that we have the perspective over the last 23, 24 years to look back and say, well, we've gotten to here. Why can't we go there? Right. And that's what success does for you. It gives you something to build off of, right? The foundation of the foundation. So yeah, man, it's awesome to look back. It's awesome to reflect, but what's in the rear view is going to propel us to where we really want to be, a couple miles down the road with some pretty lofty goals, but it'll be the same thing that got us here will get us there. It'll be great people making sacrifices, joining forces, helping us fulfill the vision. And one thing that we always do at the Life Foundation, we have a whole lot of fun getting there. So
I love it. Wow. This has been unbelievable, Matt. Like, this has been so incredible, and it's just a small reflection of what you've been doing and the impact you've been having for a long, long time. Not just on the 7,500 kids a year, on the team, on your family, on the team that you lead, and just seeing your leadership and leading by example. That's why they're so good at what they do, is because you're doing it. You're leading by example. They see that you could just be living easy and, on the couch, or just you're not just taking the time for your family and for yourself, but you're not just doing, you're really pouring into this organization, what you're doing. So I think it's so awesome. I really want to ask our listeners just if you can give $1 or $10 or $100 or whatever to the Light Foundation. Get maybe I know there's volunteer opportunities since it's close by. There's all kinds of ways to support it. So tell us more about how they can do that and how they can find out more about you and what you're doing.
Sure. Yeah. The easiest way is to go to our website, which is mattlight72.com. And I have to put a disclaimer in there. I don't like putting my first name on that. It is definitely not about me. It is the Light Foundation, but that website was the only one, because apparently Light Foundation is something that women put on their face. So for all the women, I know you know what I'm talking about. It's some makeup thing, but no. Mattlight72.com is our website. And it's a great way if you have an interest to learn more about the programming, or if you have a youngster in your own home, or you have a nephew or a grandson or a granddaughter, and you want to get them involved, we would love to have them. And so you can learn a lot about the programming. There's ways to give there as well. And I love the point too. Volunteers are really the lifeline of what we do. If you want to get involved with an event, with a program, if you have a skill set, right? Or if you're part of a company, we do a lot of career educational tours with the kids. We love to get the kids out in the community. We've been up in your area to show kids what a big dairy operation looks like, or, what a manufacturing plant looks like, so there's a lot of ways to get involved, to take part in what we do as a nonprofit, and just appreciate, all the support that we've had over the years.
I mean, this has been absolutely unbelievable. Please check them out. I think our area is very blessed because of the work, because of a lot of the values that organizations like you are instilling, that we're instilling in our homes, hopefully faith, family, hard work, accountability, all that stuff. there's a lot of successful people out there. And I really encourage and challenge people to check out the Light Foundation and do a little bit to help support the cause. I think this is so great, Matt. And I just want to just thank you so much again for the time you spent with us to have an impact on our listeners, on their families. You know, that it's not 7,500 kids. There's a bigger impact you're having and a compounding effect and ripple effect. So thank you so much. And just thanks for coming on, because I know you're busy. For the Mueller Real Estate and Business Podcast, signing off. Thank you for listening to the Mueller Real Estate and Business Podcast. We hope you found today's episode helpful. If you know current or aspiring investors or entrepreneurs or anyone that would benefit from today's episode, we appreciate you sharing it with them, or better yet, providing us a 5-star review. To learn more about Mueller Real Estate, visit our website at www.muellerre.com. You can also sign up for our newsletter or local events via our website. In closing, I encourage you to be purposeful in all areas of life, educate yourself, network with others that have been successful, take action, and lead. Thank you.